off with, well, technology for dynamic ad insertion has been ready for quite some time. You even have it up on your slide. It seems like the adoption in the pay TV environment has been really slow.
Oh.
What do you think this is happening? And then everybody else jump in on top after we have a chance to talk about it.
I think first there is a question about how mature is it. I think we've been working with implementing this for quite some time now. We see that it definitely has areas where it needs to be mature more. One of the areas where we're really struggling is how to make this work with Dash. And our experiences so far is that we see that the people who actually have a requirement to do this on Dash have been cheating in a manner that we conceptually are not allowed to do, so that we need to get some concessions to make it work properly that way. Secondly, from a more a commercial point of view, I think this is, of course, it's important for the broadcasters to be able to monetize it. But from a distributor point of view, this is not something that, compared to how it's working today, is adding real customer value, because on the general part of our service, the users are now allowed to skip the ads. So putting an ad not skippable for them is not something that we will enforce from our side. But of course we have contractual obligations that we need to meet with the broadcasters to implement this. And so we are in the process of doing it. We have launched for live recently, and there is more to come on the catch-up service soon.
It's interesting that you say that, because I presume that this was taking place here. Because in the US, it's commonplace. I mean, I receive different advertising than my neighbor gets. In this case, and so I don't understand what you say, that there's some that are cheating out there. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, to make it work for the Android clients, our current solution will be that we will actually need to remove the DRM for some of the content.
All right. Is anyone else want to?
Yeah.
Yes, Tine.
I think just a reflection on that. When you mentioned that this might not bring that much value to the consumer, I think that the dynamic ad insertion itself can allow us actually to deliver more content to the consumer, because it's a way of monetizing. And if you monetize, you can offer more. But where we are right now, I think it's like you say, Henke, it's about the maturity of the technology, or the fact that we don't have one standard. So for a broadcaster, if we would need to go into 5 different tech setups, that can become quite complicated. So for us together to work towards looking at what could be that one standard in Norway would really help. And then it's always a question about who holds the relationship with the advertisers. That's something that the TV houses, that's our core competence, and we've done it for years. So that's an area that needs to be kind of also agreed on.
Well, let's just stay with that. Do the operators and broadcasters see the benefits of DAI with you, Tine? I mean, are you starting to see, are they happy with the current business model? Are they starting to want to expand a little bit more?
On the dynamic ad insertion, yes, we do have good dialogues on that. And I guess it's a lot to do with, what kind of tech setup do we use? Will it be a standard, or do we need to go into multiple sets of it? And then it's about, okay, who takes what role in the value chain? Who owns the relationship and holds the relationship with the advertisers?
And you're seeing their struggle with that then? I mean,
no, not necessarily. I just think that we haven't gotten to that point yet. But there needs to be some cooperation between the different players in the value chain to make it happen.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that a little bit.
I think from a sort of Swedish perspective, to add on to sort of representing Sweden here, but I think there we have had a little bit more of a standardized approach, where the broadcasters have come together with operators, and that certainly have helped to push that and be pushed out for the operators. But it is a complex implementation. It takes time, and we have solutions now out in production, but it's really been requiring that standardized approach. So on the topic of collaboration, that's very much of a key.
Are you finding yourselves that you're having to be the sales, the ones that go into the market with the agencies and motivate and promote this? to be
Well, I
able to-
think just as in Norway, the initiative is much driven from a broadcaster perspective, obviously, because they have the heritage of being a sales house for advertisement. But I do think there is a huge sort of part of the operator's world. Sort of the future of TV is obviously addressable TV. We see that. But exactly how you as an operator will monetize it is just not there yet. Partly because it's still quite small figures. We're doing it on a TVE basis and not basically our full customer base. So it's very much harder for us to monetize it at this moment.
I would have to think addressable TV, addressable advertising. I mean, all of that could be conflicting within those groups. Jérôme.
I think another aspect is the question of scale. I think in Sweden it probably makes a bit more sense. What we see in Norway is that we're not sure that the scale is big enough that it actually makes sense to develop such a complexity. So, for example, we've seen in Sweden over the past 10 years, there has been some regional distribution of commercials. So the ad market is more regional, but in Norway, we've discussed it also in the past, the traditional technology, and it's never happened that we can actually send regional ads in the traditional networks in the different regions. So there might also be a question of whether the Norwegian market is big enough that you actually can have a relevant advertising in Bergen and another one in Ålesund or in Tromsø.
Wouldn't that be more of an excuse to be moving forward then? It's like that's ancillary revenue that you're looking at to be able to target the advertising towards the consumer, and then that would pull them into the programming that you have.
Well, I mean, if you really want to have traction on that, you need to have the whole value chain to actually push for it. And it has to start with the advertisers, and it has to start with the broadcasters, and obviously distributors. But we don't really feel like the advertisers and the broadcasters are pushing really in that direction at the moment. Yeah, maybe because there are other things that are more burning on the agenda at the moment as well.
Yeah, it seems like in the studies that have really come forth is that when you do have the targeted advertising, it really has increased viewership because people really will still stay because the advertising is of interest to them. So they'll stay with it. Marius, you were...
Yeah, I agree in some sense. However, we also see that the OTT traffic is trending upwards, while as the technologies that aren't really suited for this are going the other way. I actually think that this is about a cultural problem, the way we used to deal with in our ecosystem and regard each other as kind of like a hostile partner once a year, and then we go into a week of deliberation about prices, and sometimes we even cut each other's signals and such. So, you know, as for my side, we see this in a very positive light. Being part of Telia, of course, we are also having kind of part of the solution. So, you know, I'm fully committed to going forward with this, with the broadcaster support.
Okay. Jérôme, back to you. Another topic where the industry could gain some from cooperation is in content preparations. You were speaking to that in your presentation and how you're preparing your content and being able to offer that out to other services and capabilities. It seems like most services have more or less the same content prepared for the same devices, quality. How are we going to manage that?
You're talking about the complexity part, or you're talking about on the market part, how to differentiate yourself?
Complexity part.
On the?
Complexity part.
The complexity. I think we would all like to go in that direction that Henke was presenting, and to say, can we do things in a more optimal way and work together and use the same resources. One of the challenges that we see is that we do it at different times, because as you're mentioning, we've got content negotiations at different periods, and so we agree on different deals at different times. And so when we agree on launching a service from one content provider, our competitors might already have launched it, or they haven't signed yet. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, for us, it's I think for everybody here, at the moment we're still there that we need to find one and one, and we want to go multiple against multiple. But
seems like a centralized location would be very beneficial, a marketplace of some sort.
Yes, on the technical side, definitely.
Do you feel the same way? When it
Yeah,
comes?
definitely. So we're, like I said when I closed my session, is that we have openly invited everybody to participate in whatever sourcing we do, or participate in take the services that we produce for ourselves, or if somebody's doing something very smart, intelligent, we would more than happy to take what they have and park whatever we're doing.
Everyone else feel the same way? Pretty much?
Well, I think that over time, as an industry, and especially in local markets like Norway, where local content is the key, and that's our differentiator. You know, the broadcasters differentiator, the TV distributors differentiator, and any kind of OTT services or aggregators that are local. You know, that's our key, and if we want to kind of protect that and assure that we got a continuous strong position and financial muscles to continue to drive that vehicle of producing local content, right, we would need to find ways to cooperate. So I think that we're at the industry is probably at some kind of approaching some kind of tipping point. So the next few years, we will need to figure out, you know, what is the future to be? Are these to be these isolated services out there, both for traditional and digital, or is it to be some kind of one big Hulu embracing everything in the market, or are we to find some kind of hybrid models? We're not right there yet.
Yeah, it seems like that one big resource would be a little constraining on a differentiator that each one of the services would be able to offer, but certainly as a resource, it would be something that would be of interest in negotiating from a content standpoint. Jessica, you know, all TV operators on the panel, and in Europe for that matter, have or are in the process of launching Android TV set-top boxes. They're partnering with Google that sometimes might seem as a potential competitor as well as we move forward. There's 140 operators right now with Android platforms that they're really working towards. This could not have been an easy decision, was it, when you were moving towards this to incorporate that?
I think we have always seen Google as a partner more than a competitor, more in the towards where we're going, launching a new generation of set-top box. Looking back 2 years ago, where we took that decision, and having been sort of in the market now for a year, it was really about being able to launch a platform of 4 different infrastructures. We were on DTT, on IPTV, on coaxial, and OTT as well.
Yes, you were.
So it was quite of a complex product to launch with. And we also had the ambition to really break down the boundaries in between content sources, so to say. And there I'm talking sources such as streaming services, linear, catch-up, VOD, all types of buzzwords that we use in the industry. That really doesn't matter for the consumer. You just want to find the content that you're looking for. And Google really, with the custom launcher, was a great solution for that. We were able to be very modular and flexible in how we developed the solution, picking and basically choosing vendors that worked with us, and doing some of it internally as well.
Right, so broad benefits, really.
Very much so. It's more like a smorgasbord of basically toolkits that you can pick and choose from, while still owning the experience. And I think that was the key aim for us, to really own that sort of entry point for the user, and not at least to have the ability to choose between or to really use the kit that Google comes with, everything from Assistant in our own Swedish language, Chromecast, universal search. All types of functionality that would take us a very long time to develop ourselves was also there to choose from.
That was also through a partnership or a relationship with TiVo too, that you were being able to incorporate that with Android television. You know, are you familiar with this new announcement that they just made, TiVo with QBTV?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and we still we work with TiVo for the recommendation engine, for example, and we see that more and more that it's more of a pick and choose than a one-stop shop for everything. And then you're able to use some services from some providers. So that's really it's really fruitful as an operator to work that way if you have that capability.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Marius, are you looking at this? You have Android as well? Or?
Yeah, I think we all have our Android implementation by now, but it's And I agree. We talk about Android TV as something very special, you know, so something totally separate from everything we've done. I don't quite see it that way. Yes, you get a toolkit, but you also get at least with the custom launcher, the standard launcher is not relevant for us. But with the custom launcher, you do get a canvas, I would say. You know, you can form it as you will, and that's what we do. That's where we can differentiate, and that's. You know, to me, Android TV is an operating system. It's with some added features.
Yeah, no, it really kind of does. You know, one of the things that, you know, the pay TV broadcasters on one side and the OTT providers on the other side, you know, what principles, you know, do they share to be able to work and collaborate? Jérôme, that's right in the heart of what you're doing.
Which principles? You mean for the customers or?
Internally, that you're developing your whole platform and sharing and collaborating together that you'd be able to work together on.
Well, one of the things that's important is that you try to harmonize the experience, the customer experience. It's probably one of the difficult things to do because each platform comes with their own way of working, way of navigating. So how to make sure that when your customer goes from one side to the other, they will get the same kind of experience. And then there is the obvious thing that you need to unify the backend so you can navigate seamlessly between the different platforms. That's crucial, that you don't build, I'm going back to the silos, but that you're not building silos between the different platforms, and it's easy for the customers to get content from there to here.
Yeah, no, it seems like there'd be tremendous opportunity to be able to work with the broadcasters in that capacity and make that work. You know, one of the elements that are at play right at the moment, or we're starting to take a look at some hybrid models, you know, being able to incorporate ad-based news programming with on-demand AVOD and then also live sports. Are you starting to explore any of those kinds of television programming and ad models, Tine?
If we're starting to?
If you're starting to look at the hybrid models, if it's just a subscription model, or are you incorporating any ad-based programming as well?
Yes, we do already on our streaming services. We got multiple streaming services. So just to recap that, at a local level, we got a streaming service called Dplay, which is more kind of the aggregate we have of a lot of our local content and the extension of that, and very targeting of the younger audience or the cord nevers. And then we got more like global assets, like more like passion verticals that are like truly like Golf TV, Motor Trend. We entered a 10-year deal recently with BBC on collaborating on all nature and science content worldwide, except from the UK. So we have many assets, and we're working really hard on how to optimize the monetization on that. And for instance, on Dplay, we have a hybrid model. We have an AVOD service, advertisement-funded service, where we mainly focus on our local content. And then we have an SVOD service.
They're all separate, though.
And they are two separate, but they're still on the same platform. So you got like that mixed user experience on one platform, and then one can discuss if that's the better one or if it should be more like Nentu, that's got like one that is for the AVOD and one that is for the SVOD. And then, there's a lot of nuances and layers in between there on how you can work with that advertisement funded in many different angles. So it's not only the pure traditional advertisement spot that needs to be the revenue stream.
And the length of the spots in themselves, are you still pretty much focused in on 30-second spots, or are they starting to shorten?
They're starting to shorten, yes. And it needs to be adapted to the content as well, because for instance, if you want to target the younger audience or the cord nevers, you need to also focus more on shorter formats. You need to adapt the storytelling and create shorter formats. And that also creates a different environment for the ads.
Right.
So we'll need to work with the ads formats as well.
Is anyone else experimenting with the length of advertising, in this capacity? Are they all 30 seconds? Or are you also looking at shorter versions for your generational advertising? No one's changing that?
The distributors are not into doing our own advertising, so we just rely on what the
And
broadcasters.
just redistribute it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it seems like there's a real growth right at the moment in, trying to figure out the engagement factor of keeping the audience viewing the advertising. And so some of that, just what you just said, the 30-second commercials are really long in many capacities. And so by being able to have that in the dynamic ad insertions of short on different platforms is something to really consider.
And it's really like the ad load itself. It's like you say, it's important to figure out, and it's also to monitor it and really calibrate in regards to what target group you have. For instance, if you're targeting cord nevers and short formats, they have kind of a different expectation on the ad versus maybe a more like older audience that uses streaming services as a catch-up and watches longer formats. So but it's a lot to learn there from the newspaper industry when they went digital and how they work. The newspaper industry work a lot with live pictures now and what they do with their ads. It's because they really need to calibrate day by day on how they work with this.
Oh, it has to be really focused in on that selective programming and keeping the attention. Marius, with Get, are you looking at the agencies in itself? Are you talking with them at all about the length, or are you also just
No, I'm with Henke on that one.
Yeah, just being able to. Are any of the agencies looking at trying to bring in new types of?
In Sweden, yes, they are. In Norway, not so much. We will be looking to find synergies with the Telia Sweden system in the months and years coming up. But as for now, we don't talk to advertisers at all.
And okay, moving from that into there was a question earlier in the audience about 4K and UHD. Is that something of a compelling offering that you're needing to address right now? Is that your audience is really starting to want that kind of programming?
Honestly, I'm not seeing a big push from the customers to get that, but and the content is fairly slim. But our platforms are there. We can take it if it's produced. Networks a little bit here and there, but it's we're ready.
Well, it's what we see. We operate in multiple markets, of course, and started to test on the 4K, and we do see that you have niche audience on certain content, for instance, within sports, where they highly appreciate the 4K. So that's definitely an area that we looking into. And maybe it's not like the mass audience we want to ask for it within the next year, but you have early adopters, you have sophisticated users, and they highly appreciate it, especially within sports.
Yeah, I have to think the Olympics are very compelling for that, or any kind of competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did launch a 4K on satellite for some Finnish ice hockey. But again, it's very, very niche, and it's not something that we have content available 24/7 on.
Yeah, well, selective programming and interest in it. Would that be something that would be an ancillary charge to, or would that be a selective offering that?
We did this basically as a pilot, and it was just part of the subscription. It was not charged separately.
And the level of viewership went up, or?
We haven't looked into those figures yet. So, but it was just more of a gimmick than anything.
Something to talk about.
Yeah,
pretty much so. But that's not the case when it comes to live sports. Sports is something that is very much engaging right at the moment. So does that also translate over into anything live, being able to deliver that kind of content within news or any kind of live event?
I think that, live sports is what might be driving 4K to the mass market with broad distribution. But I think the way we see it now is that we expect it to be more event-driven and not something that we will be doing 24/7 on as a mass distribution on all of our channels.
Yeah, it could, for instance, be like in an environment like with Canal Digital, using that as an example, that has their Canal Digital Go platform and offering. It could be like its own WOD section that could be 4K. That could be quite rich. But then probably for the near future, mainly targeting a niche audience that really appreciate that and would want that.
Well, you're kind of identifying kind of a shift in viewer behavior at this moment. I mean, what are they mostly interested in? I mean, being able to get the content to them? What is the primary area of interest? Is it just still lean back and kind of engage with programming that they're more familiar with, or what is happening with your viewer behavior? Jessica, I know with the TiVo box you were able to really serve up a lot of different types of programming. What are the areas that the consumers are starting to look at and shift towards? Short form, long form?
I think mostly from our customers, we see the need to get one source for all content. Also, what we try to offer with our Android TV solution. So, in terms of what type of content, sports is of course a main driver of a pay TV offering still, but also the breadth of the content and being able to access everything into one solution. As an operator, you have a bit of an older audience that you need to simplify the experience for. So aggregation, definitely.
I think the main difference is the ages, or how old your customers are and where are they on their development curves. So we see huge differences between people who are 50 plus and people who are 20, 30 in what they're consuming, obviously. So we've got huge segments of the market who are still consuming more than 90% live TV. And when we're looking at the web TV services, then it's VOD is more than half of what they're watching.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And what we see is that, we need to remember when we talk about this shift from linear to digital, and sometimes, often one say that, it's a huge shift and, linear is dying and so forth, which I would claim it's not dying at all, because Norwegians tend to watch linear TV approximately 2 hours per day. And of course, that's a bit of an older audience, it's not the young cord nevers. But it shows that that there's an expectation and demand there for very kind of solid local entertainment still, and that's what they're looking for. They want it really good. So what we're really striving for is to be super relevant within the local and of course the sports. And then we have the younger audience, which are mainly the cord nevers. And what we see is that we have programs. Some programs work really well on linear, while other programs work well on digital. They wouldn't work on linear that well at all, like, for instance, X on the Beach, or we have a show in Norway called White Boys, which is very popular, which works really well on digital, and they expect to find it there, but they don't expect to find it on linear. But then we have these niche groups, or like, what we call like the super fans that really want everything. They want, everything within golf, or everything within motor, or everything within nature and science. And we're really trying to cater to that audience now in the shift that we're doing. That's why we're now also focusing on creating these global services, for instance, Golf TV, that you can get it all, or for Motor Trend, or for together with BBC, to really see, where we can, where people wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't find everything on the traditional TV anymore, or within a pay TV package. We'll need to cater and maybe, think way beyond the normal live TV signal. We need to offer them more within those services.
What we're talking about there is conversion. How are you retaining your audience and converting them? You've pretty much hit the OTT level, and from subscription, and now bringing them over from your linear programming has got to be, really interesting from a conversion standpoint. Have you been looking into that?
Well, we're not really bringing them over from linear, because the linear is really solid, even though the average minutes goes down that you're watching on linear. What we're doing on digital is really complementary, is gaining, instead of that time that goes off from linear TV, instead of that time going to other players outside of us, we're actually offering them something else. So what we're seeing on our digital streaming services, or the streaming services right now, is that we have a lot of, for instance, on Dplay, a lot of cord nevers. On Eurosport Player, we have a lot of people that just want it all. They already subscribe to the Eurosport on the traditional TV packages through the TV distributors. They just want it all. So it's really to cater to the fragmented audience. It's not about really proactively cannibalizing each other.
With the cannibalization. Yeah. Marius, are you looking at with Get? You're a programmer. You're out there. Are you looking at how you can pull linear viewers over into your on-demand or on your OTT service? Is that something that's been in consideration and conversion?
Consideration, yeah. Well, to us, it's as I said in my talk, we have a few legacy products that are fairly non-competitive at the time. And in the new solution, then there is really no marked difference between a linear viewer and, well, there's a marked difference between a linear viewer and a heavy WAV user, and there's also big differences within the devices. But as for our UI and how we present content, we try to make it as simple as possible for people to watch whatever they want. And usually that doesn't, well, at least for me, that doesn't include so much linear, except from sports and obvious things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So what we see is it's not a matter of converting or customers from the linear to the OTT, but it's a matter of giving them the convenience of on demand. Mm-hmm. So if people like to watch stuff real time live, we're happy. If they like to watch it on demand, well, equally good. The most important thing for us is that they actually utilize and enjoy our service. If they want to do it live, if they want to do it on demand,
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
So have you seen a change in human behavior then over the course of the last year? You know, in the core, you know, what we're starting to find, because human behavior is a very difficult task if you're really trying to motivate it. And when people are really established in how they view or experience or share, you know, and things have been moving very rapidly. So have you seen a shift in viewing behavior, consumer behavior, human behavior?
I think that when we launched on Android TV, when we had the opportunity to put the on-demand content and then in particular the archives more in the face of our customers than hiding it as a separate app that required real effort for them to access, we saw that it really picked up the usage of the on-demand service. And also, of course, start over on the linear show. Really, people don't look upon that as catch-up as such. It's just, they look up at it as it's just convenience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's capitalizing on behavior.
Yeah.
They want it now.
No, I think I agree. We don't see really a shift from linear to VOD, but merely a shift of the way you distribute the linear stream. Used to distribute it more traditionally. Now we look at it from an OTT perspective, but it's still linear TV. It's just time shifted, or it's on another device. But it's fewer channels, but the linear viewing is still quite strong.
Yeah. And what one see as well, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but in Norway, you see the phases of the shift towards time shifted or other streaming services. Is that really kind of the older demo? We talk like 60+ demo is now also getting into that phase of having adopted the use of time shifted,
yes, very much
subscribing to the Netflixes and others use. So that has really reached the mass markets.
Yeah, that's the fastest growing viewer category, is 50+. Is starting to get convenient with the kind of programming that they want, and studies have been showing that that's really changing their viewing behavior. Is this ease of access of the technical platforms of providing it to whatever device.
And having said that, I just want as a comment, like that in Norway or in the Nordics, actually, the TV distributors have really, I would say, have kind of helped in this matter, because the user experience that you get on a pay TV operator in the Nordics versus you go other places in Europe, is way more sophisticated in the Nordics.
Way more sophisticated. Yep. It's exceptional. It's almost difficult to see the differentiator between the different services and being able, that brings me to Android TV. I mean, coming back, I challenged a little bit as far as Google, a competitor, and out there, but they've made it very simple to be able to access multiple programming capabilities. Are you finding that you're really starting to see more of an engaged viewer with the TiVo platform with Android, or how are you approaching that, and where do you see the shifts taking place?
I mean, in terms of behavior, we definitely see the open nature of Google or Android TV. We see that in the viewing behavior. We see that we use linear TV together with SVOD or other sources for that sense as well. And we were seeing also an increased usage of VOD and our own ingested content. So it's a matter of putting it in front of the customer and being that entry point to the SVOD rather than as a complementary service.
And are the Android platform has great capability from data intelligence, and are you utilizing that also in your programming choices of being able to serve that up or stacking it for the selection within your viewing behavior?
I mean, Android itself provides a whole other set of data that you can base your decisions on, absolutely. So that's very interesting for us. We, as an operator, don't source content in that way, but we do have very close partnerships with our broadcasters in the region. And that obviously helps us much more.
Well, the TiVo platform in and of itself with Digital Smiths to be able to personalize the programming that you're being able to offer has got to be very beneficial. Are you seeing that be engaged too, or each individual viewer has their selected programming?
Yeah, I mean, we work much more in a sense that we do with the rest of our app-based products, the same way we work with our Android-based product, being able to base content based on your interest or based on what we see others are watching, etc. So it's a whole other set of experimentation of working editorially and also automated with that set. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, when we launched our Android TV platform, at first we launched without Netflix, and we saw that when we launched Netflix, the streaming usage really picked up, and we see that a lot of our customers is using our set-top box for their Netflix entertainment, which we think is just a way of providing them convenience.
Are you still seeing growth in Netflix in the market? Or is it leveling off?
I think, I don't know the details, but I think in Norway it's getting quite saturated. But I think
Yes. Worldwide, it's getting quite saturated. You know, as far as, there was this recent article that was here about Nordic, and it's like 71% in the world is Netflix and 41% here. You know, you've done a admirable job on, staying them off on coming into the market. So that's a reflection of the overall programming and ease technically, and also what's available to the viewer is really embracing what your overall offerings. Marius, are you finding with the personalization, the data that you have, are you changing any of your outreach to your viewers? Are you finding that to be a compelling offering with the Android platform?
Yeah, no, sure. I'll touch on the previous point a little bit. For us at least, and I think for the remaining pay TV operators there as well, we're not really trying to block Netflix out or to steer traffic to our services. We are embracing them and allowing them to come on our platform. As for personalization, we do that en masse now.
Natural.
Yeah, no, sure. And we have some fairly new, but very advanced use behavior metrics now. We can use both to optimize the UIs themselves and also to provide content that we believe is relevant for the consumer. And we also see that the stuff that are produced in that way, that are sorted by machine learning algorithms and such, are picking up a lot more attention from as compared to editorial rows and such. So it's very interesting.
There's like an 800-pound gorilla in the room right in the moment. And, a couple of weeks ago, Apple announced their overall service. This is to the panel as a whole. What do you think about that? Are you going to embrace their service within yours?
I think consumers will decide what they want.
But are you going to?
Yeah. So there are two main truths. You cannot fight technology, and you cannot fight human behavior. So if the consumers want it, we need to get it to them.
Well, let's just be clear.
But I think at least my view now is that it will take quite some time for Apple to get some momentum, because it's already saturated. It's not nobody is sitting waiting for their launch because they have nothing to do. It's so much out there that they really need to bring something special to the table to be able to build a substantial customer base.
So you're saying right now that their service isn't that special?
I don't know yet what they will be launching when they come to the Nordics, but I think I know nobody who is not sleeping at night because they are so much awaiting what they will be launching.
Yeah, but they have 750 million people around the world that are engaged with their platforms and also their content, that are just hungering for being able to say that I've got Apple now, and is that something that's a motivator in your market? In the
Well,
Nordics?
I think what we saw when they launched Apple Music is that there has been some uptake in the Nordic markets, but Spotify had such a strong position that they didn't really replace them. So I think what we're probably in the short term, what we're going to see in the Nordic is that they're going to struggle to really have a growth in the Nordic markets.
Okay.
I think sort of looking at Apple and Google's different strategies in reaching customers, I think Apple has been very much, of course, focused on the hardware side, which is an advantage when rolling out their own services. But Google's approach in working and cooperating with operators seems to have also an effect to reach end consumers. So it's just two different ways of doing it, and it's very interesting how they will reach consumers with the two different strategies.
I agree, and I think we saw that Apple had a pretty big chance to take a strong position on the TV market, but their prices were too high, and they missed that opportunity to really get a big footprint. So now they're switching strategy, and it's going to be really interesting to see how it's working. But
yeah, they really had deep pockets but very short arms, as far as being able to reach down in and try to change their viewing behavior. But, we've yet to really see where the market is going, because Facebook is in the wings with their whole new offering, and as far as how they're going to be able to manipulate programming and be able to serve it up. So this is only the first step when it comes to these players. We've already seen it with Amazon, their new channels, and all of you are being able to embrace that and engage that to your audience, which is beneficial all the way around. Point being, though, is Nordic viewers are very unique and very supportive, and they embrace your overall offerings, which is to be it's very admirable and very tremendous. We're right at our point, but we're going to move to questions. Is there any questions out in the audience? I can't see it.
Questions.
Okay, please.
To start with, is any of the operators on the panel looking into original content production?
Oh, good question.
I think Marius should start on that one.
Closest.
Short answer, no.
For everybody, or
Please.
No, as the other operators in our territory, we don't have a strategy of producing on our own. We see that as it's too small of a market to get a return on that investment as an operator. Would be a bit too late to the game to do that, and we have quite of a good model in aggregating all types of content that's out there already and selling that to the consumer. So, yeah.
Just a comment to that. I'm not an operator, obviously, but I'm thinking for us as local players that are competing against the Netflix and the HBOs and so forth, we're going from a world when we've been very season dependent to having to become season independent to be relevant and be relevant the whole year around. And our stronger card is the local content that we got in sports. And we continuously need to increase those investments to be relevant. And so I think that across the industry, it will be, there are opportunities for us to look together on how we could do original programming and so forth to increase the volume of local content to stay competitive towards the Amazons and the Netflixes and the Facebooks and all of them.
Which is a question for me, sorry. Would you look at a collaboration with producers and being able to participate in new programming? Would that be something that Discovery would be,
to look into together with operators?
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's
an opportunity.
We see it a lot in our market already, that SVOD providers go together with public broadcasters and then financing content together. We most likely will see more of that, I would say.
I think this is a really interesting topic, but we have more questions.
Yeah, it seems like the broadcasters and operators still just meeting once per year to discuss the rights. You don't think you have to change that model in the future?
What was the question? I didn't
like that you meet once a year to discuss the rights between the broadcaster and operators. You have this week when sometimes you shut it down and so on. You don't need to. Do you think you have to change that model to in the future to gain the service side?
I could give like a first go on that, and I'm sure that we all have a lot of opinions about that. I'm thinking that we're moving from, again, there also like a word where we, go a few years back before digital really took off and before we really saw the shift, it was much more, you could plan for longer horizon, and it was one asset, and it was mainly the linear, TV assets. While now, there's a very fragmented environment around us, and we all are looking at, how to do the shift towards digital and how to build solid positions and so forth. And there's a lot of assets, that could potentially be at play, to cooperate around them. And so I think that the partnerships will be much more kind of, yes, there will be agreements that are for longer term, that is kind of the base, but that they will be more continuously, innovation together on how to build the positions for the future.
I think also one of the areas of increased complexity in these negotiations is that in the good old days, we were the only way for the broadcasters to get to the market. Now the broadcasters are going to market with their own play services. So they have much more of a dual interest. Yes, they need us to sell and they want us to pay as much as possible, and then they want to go direct to consumers and get as much as possible from that direction as well, and that's a struggle that we're into now, to figure out how that new power balance should be.
Yeah, and I think just to comment on that, and now I might not be answering really the question, but when you're getting into some, a new phase of an industry, it's about you can step forward and you can get into it, test and learn and establish, or you could wait. And for us, it's been important to get out there with the digital, to figure out how do we reach the young audience, how do we reach the golf superfans, how do we reach the motor fans and so forth, and establish our D2C business. And now there's a phase where we really need to work together with the TV distributors. Together we jointly should, have interest in, how do we cater for all the interests of an audience. So there's a lot of really great opportunities there together.
Yeah, it would be. We could keep on going. I mean, do we want one more? Were we good with one more?
We have one more that has actually come in before, but we didn't get an answer, so we'll give him another chance because it's sending in twice. How is the cost of content comparing with the cost of technology for an OTT service? Is anybody going to answer?
Both are huge.
Well, that's defined. If you look at the total content distribution value chain and the cost of content, content is, of course, by far the most costly part of this. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to optimize also every part of the technical value chain.
Very much so. That's a great point to close this panel out. Marius, Jessica, Jérôme, Tine, and Henke, thank you very much. Everybody, a round of applause.